Greetings and welcome to Wisconsin in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, executive editor of the Center Square Newswire service. Joining me today is Ben Yount, our Wisconsin correspondent. Ben, how are things?
I am so excited that we've got tickets to the Packer family night practice over the weekend, my first time to Lambeau, and it's not going to cost me an arm and a leg because it's just a practice, and I get the added benefit of not watching them beat the Bears this year. So it's a win-win-win all around in the Yount household.
It's going to be an interesting year for the Packers. First time in more than 15 years without Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback. I look forward to seeing the new kid that was drafted a few years ago.
If Jordan Love turns out to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, then everyone should just come to Green Bay because Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be interesting.
Ben, you wrote an interesting story this week at the Center Square regarding state taxpayers' essentially debt load. Being in Wisconsin, it's the second highest in the Midwest. Pales compare the debt load of those in Illinois. By the way, I'm an Illinois resident. Ben, you're a former Illinois resident. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the debt load the taxpayers there face because of state government spending?
Yeah, the Institute for Reforming Government came out with this report, and it really is just a snapshot. There's no sort of policy push behind it. It's sometimes you get a report that states a problem, and then there's a jab or a punch that comes at the end with some sort of well, and this is why we need to do this, or they lay the blame at the feet of lawmakers, governors, recalcitrant voters, whatever. This piece from IRG was not that. It literally was just a look at what Wisconsin owes in debt. And overall, compared to a number of other states, Wisconsin's debt is not unmanageable. That, I think, is probably the word. Not good, not bad. It is not unmanageable because of what the debt is for. Just the sort of broad strokes. He says that as of June of last year, the most recent numbers that they had, Wisconsin's got $13.1 billion in debt. You do the math, about 6 million people in the state, that's $2,200 or so per person. That makes us the second highest in the Midwest. We'll get back to that here in a second. But you got to remember that when you're talking about total debt load, you're talking about borrowing to build roads and bridges and university buildings and schools and the like. And this is what state government is supposed to do, by the way. State government is supposed to help pay for roads and bridges and public buildings, and certainly the University of Wisconsin and all of its campuses. This would be like taking a look at your personal debt load and saying, okay, well, we owe on the house because we didn't pay cash for the house. We still got a car payment. I got a credit card payment, and then we're paying we're paying Netflix and Disney Plus and Paramount and all of those. And while your house is a substantial amount of debt that you just don't have that money in the bank, that's good debt. That's the kind of debt that you're supposed to have as a family. If you've got $50,000 in credit card debt that you have no way of paying off, that's not necessarily good debt. So this debt here in Wisconsin, while it is a large per capita number, there is nothing that I saw in the report that made me think, oh, wow, here is a problem for this. To give you sort of an understanding as to just what Wisconsin's debt load is, the IRG report says that the debt service, the payments on this debt, about 2% of Wisconsin's total state budget. Now, we do have a $40 billion a year state budget, but 2% of your income going to debt, even if that's you and your household, that's not an unmanageable debt load. It's just always nice to compare us to other states.
Well, and let's do that comparison. Ben, join me in ripping my home state of Illinois. Because when you look at the debt load of Wisconsin, which is this not unmanageable, as you said, I agree with that, which is $2,200 a year. It's still the second highest in the Midwest. Illinois is just so outrageously higher than Wisconsin's or any other neighboring state? Tell us that.
We'll do this sort of Casey Kasem, Ryan Seacrest top 40 style and start with the smallest number and work our way up to number one.
There you go.
Michigan has a per capita debt load of just $922. That's not a lot of money. Now that's a comparison. That's sort of, the math of not a very large overall debt total plus about 10 million people. Michigan has more people than Wisconsin and Iowa. Iowa's per capita debt load is $977 per person. Again, not a lot of debt and not a lot of people. Iowa has been rather fiscally sound over the past couple of years, and IRG is leaping at the opportunity to explain that they're going to cut their income tax and become even more financially. But that's a story and a conversation for another podcast. Minnesota is third. They've got about $1,600 per person in debt. Again, this is one of these ones, a couple of $1,000. When you take a look at the grand scope of state government, it is not unmanageable. Then you have Illinois, and you go from $2,226 of debt per person in Wisconsin to $17,231 of debt per person in the state of Illinois. And this is where it's important to take a look at where that money goes, what is owed. And a good chunk of Illinois' debt is for pensions, for its unfunded promises to public school teachers, university workers, and state of Illinois workers with a compounding 3% COLA every year into infinity that is loading down the state of Illinois. For years, I would hear from former state rep Susie Bassey that the state of Illinois is not a functioning state government. It is a retirement system for about 500,000 people, and it is a healthcare system for about 3 million mostly poor people, an increasing number of those not in this country legally. So when you have the kind of difference in debt, it's not just the extra $15,000 per person in debt money that Illinois has. You also have to look at what this money is owed for. It's not roads. It's not university buildings. It's not bridges. It's not hospitals. It is almost entirely, Illinois' debt is almost entirely based on pensions. And in the same way that Wisconsin's debt service is about 2% of the state budget, Illinois' pension debt is growing to be almost 20% of the state's budget. And that just has a shrink effect. You know this. If you've got a really expensive car payment, you've got less money to go to the grocery store or to go out to eat or to do really anything else. And until that debt is paid off, the state of Illinois is going to continue to carry around not only this huge number, $17,000 per person, but a huge percentage of what I think fiscal reformers would say is bad debt.
And you were way ahead of me in fleeing Illinois and its debt crisis. Is there room for me in Wisconsin?
They would love to have you come to Wisconsin. And in fact, there have been over the years several recruiting initiatives to try and grab young people out of Chicago and say, hey, you can move an hour and a half north of the city and escape those taxes, particularly local taxes in and around Chicago. Now, the Institute for Reforming Government will also be quick to tell you that while Wisconsin is better than Illinois, that's not necessarily something that is a difficult bar to clear. And they will also say that there is room here in Wisconsin for tax reform because Illinois has a flat tax, just under 5%. Wisconsin has a progressive tax that goes well beyond that. Property taxes in the Milwaukee area are going up to pay for schools. So while Wisconsin is in a far better fiscal shape than Illinois, there are a lot of conservatives and budget hawks here in the state, in Wisconsin, that would say, yeah, there's room for improvement. And this debt load report does show that. IRG said that while Illinois makes most states look like wise financial stewards, there's definitely more work to be done in the ways of taxing and spending here in Wisconsin. One last number to prove that point. The budget for the state of Illinois is about $50 billion a year. There are almost 13 million people in the state of Illinois. The budget for the state of Wisconsin is about $40 billion a year. There are hardly 6 million people in this state.
Right.
Illinois is twice the size and spending just a few billion more than Wisconsin. So IRG is always there to say, yeah, we're better, but.
Well, Ben, my wife and I are certainly considering our options. A couple of minutes ago, I was saying, hey, Wisconsin doesn't sound so bad, but I guess we're going to have to take a harder look at that. But we are out of time. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Ben Yount, I'm Dan McCaleb. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe.